I'm very happy to have on the Goldstein on Gelt Show Cameron Herold, who I learned about by listening to his TED Talk called Teaching Kids Financial Literacy Through Entrepreneurship. But then it turned out that he himself is one of the world's most successful entrepreneurs, having started what you've probably heard of, which is 1-800-GOT-JUNK. Cameron, a real pleasure to have you.
Thanks, Douglas. I really appreciate being here.
So you are encouraging people to encourage their kids to be entrepreneurs instead of, as a lot of people say, getting a real job. Why is that?
I just noticed when I was growing up that being an entrepreneur was not actually a job that a lot of parents would push in front of their children. Now, in the last 15 or 20 years since the advent of the internet and a lot of publicity, it's become more of a cool education experience. So I saw a lot of kids in the education system who had entrepreneurial traits that weren't necessarily pushed towards entrepreneurship. They were tended to be pushed towards medication to become more like the norm. And I think you can actually spot a lot of entrepreneurial traits in kids and nurture them versus saying there's something wrong with them. That was really the impetus for the TED Talk.
So what could parents do to spot whether they're... Sorry, even before I ask the next question, I want to note that you didn't challenge me on my referring to either being an entrepreneur or getting a real job. Is that because you agree with that distinction?
Well, yeah, and I think in a lot of ways that entrepreneurship is a real job. Entrepreneurship is, adding jobs to the economy. Entrepreneurship is really just as good as being a lawyer, a doctor, a dentist, or, electrician, or a movie star, or an athlete. But society doesn't necessarily push kids along that path, and I think we should. I think we should hold it up in that same esteem. And I'm not saying that everyone should be an entrepreneur, but I think there's an awful lot of kids out there that show those entrepreneurial traits, or that we can actually nurture some entrepreneurial skills in kids to help them become more entrepreneurial either in their careers or to, in fact, be an entrepreneur itself.
So in other words, when you said in your career, someone could be a dentist or a lawyer, but be an entrepreneur in the way that he or she runs his practice.
Exactly. Yeah, I actually have a client that I coach. I coach CEOs all over the world, and one of my clients owns a chain of dental locations, and he has about 18 or 19 dental offices that he owns and operates. And he's a dentist by trade. That was what he went to school for, but he was much more entrepreneurial. And he and I used to laugh about the fact that he really struggled with dentistry. He, came out as a pretty good dentist, but never the top of his class. And it was because he was much more of an entrepreneur. So he was able to leverage that. And I think a lot of people get stuck not knowing that they have those entrepreneurial skills and that they can do something with it beyond, just what they're classically trained in.
And do you think you can actually train someone to be an entrepreneur? Are there classes kids should be taking, or is it just go out and give it a shot?
I think it's a bit of both. I think it's nurture and nature. I think that sometimes you're born with a lot of those entrepreneurial traits. I think that's what parents need to keep an eye open for. But then, yes, you can actually train the skills, the classic skills that you need to be entrepreneurial. And there are more and more courses being added to the curriculums, both in high schools and grade schools and in universities now, that teach entrepreneurship. I also think that you can learn a lot of the entrepreneurial skills almost by apprenticing and by being around other businesses. So, kids can often go and work for small, young entrepreneurial startups, and they'll gain a lot of the entrepreneurial skills just from being in that environment versus going and sitting in the classroom. But yeah, the kids can learn, all kinds of ways, online, books, courses, or by apprenticing.
So one of the fears that people have if you follow the entrepreneurial route is you'll go broke. Is it riskier to be an entrepreneur or to work for a company?
I think it's riskier to work for a company because at the end of the day, somebody can walk up to you on Monday morning and say, oh, by the way, we're reducing our company size, or we're changing direction, or we don't like you anymore, or, what have you. Whereas when you're an entrepreneur, you're in complete control. You are in control of your own destiny. I think a lot of people from the outside look at an entrepreneur and think it's risky, but it's because they don't really understand that the entrepreneur has already done the math. We've figured out how to make it all work. We understand our model. We understand where to make money along the way. So it's more of a calculated risk, much like, jumping out of an airplane with a parachute. It's a calculated risk. Whereas somebody who's very, very fearful might think it's crazy. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of people parachuting every day, and I'm sure there's not very, very many dying.
We're talking with Cameron Herold, who wrote the book Double-Double. He also consults with CEOs, and he founded 1-800-GOT-JUNK. We're talking about financial literacy, and we've been focusing on entrepreneurship, but not so much on the financial literacy side of it. Cameron, tell me, why do you think that someone who focuses on entrepreneurship might just be better at handling money?
A lot of kids are not actually good at handling the money side of things. In fact, I'm probably average at the financial side of things, but I recognized early on that what I could focus on were my strengths, and I could actually hire good accountants. We don't need to be great in all areas. And unlike the school system, which says the kids have to be good in every subject, and we're graded in every subject, and we're compared against everyone else's ability to memorize in every subject, in entrepreneurship, it's all about surrounding yourself with best people and hiring experts so that you can focus on your areas of genius. And I always say you delegate everything except genius. So if a kid is really strong in sales and marketing and leadership, that's what they should focus on, and they should hire people or outsource people to run all the other aspects of their job, the IT, the finance, operational sides. You might have somebody who's very strong on the financial side of the business, and maybe they hire somebody to run the sales and marketing because they're more inward focused. So it's not actually true. You don't need to be good on the finance side. Those people are readily available.
So let's say you wanted to teach your kids some basics about money, and a lot of people say, okay, I'll give you an allowance once a week, and you can handle it in a certain way. What's your take on allowance?
Yeah, I don't like allowances as much as giving kids the opportunity to spot opportunities around the home or around the city to make money, and then helping them with that and negotiating with them. I think a regular, weekly allowance is teaching the kids to expect a regular weekly paycheck. And then we end up managing them like managing employees, trying to hold them accountable to do those tasks. And they end up trying to do the minimal amount of work to get that regular paycheck. What I'd rather do is post a whole bunch of chores that need to get done around the house, get kids to recognize there's always 20 or 30 things that need to get done, and they can actually go and do those things and negotiate a fee for that. So maybe it's doing the laundry or raking the leaves or shoveling snow or, picking up around the kitchen or doing whatever. Those chores can all be worth something, taking out the garbage. And then if they compete against each other, you might have 2 or 3 siblings that one of them is hungrier and spotting opportunities. They get the opportunity to make money. So you're teaching them to spot opportunities, teaching them to negotiate, teaching them to hustle, teaching them to work hard, teaching them to fill some of their time with opportunities to make that money versus, the regular paycheck. I also like kids with the financial side of things that when they make money, they really have to save about half of their amount of money for housing and for their future, rather than just going off and spending it all on the next video game. So I teach kids to spend half of the money they get goes into their house account, and half the money can be spent on things that they like.
I like that. I like that the kids are learning to take responsibility for themselves. It's not only so that they won't expect one day to work for a company and the boss tells them what to do. It's just they don't get this sense of entitlement that everything is going to be paid for me. Cameron, I know that you have this concept. You refer to it as vivid vision. Can you tell us what that's about and whether that's also something that could be applied in personal finance, or is it only for CEOs?
Yeah, vivid vision can be applied to really any part of your life. It can be applied to your personal finances, to your personal life itself, to your business. The idea is essentially this. You lean out into the future as an individual or business owner and pretend that you're standing 3 years out from today. So let's say it's December 31st, 3 years from now, and you describe every aspect of your business as if you're standing in its finished state 3 years from now. You describe what the company looks like, what the culture is like, describe how people are living their core values, describe every business area as if you're kind of standing in that business department talking to the employees, describe marketing and IT, talk about what the customers are saying about you and what the employees are saying about you and what the media is writing about you. I cover it in pretty broad detail in my book, Double-Double, in chapter 1, but the idea is to describe in 3 or 4 pages in vivid detail what your company or personal life looks like 3 years in the future, so that when you share that document with everyone else, they can see what you're building as well, and they can help you reverse engineer it. And then really each sentence of that vivid vision is a finished state that you can figure out 1 or 2 projects to make that sentence come true. So if you're thinking about your financial literacy or your financial position, you'd be describing kind of that finished state and reverse engineering that.
Got it. And and frankly, it sounds a lot like a financial plan we do for people. we normally look further. In other words, we'll talk to someone about doing a retirement plan that could only come into effect 10, 15, 20 years or more down the line, but they still have to really have a vision of what they want rather than someone coming in and just saying, yeah, I want to have $1 billion, because that seems a little bit too amorphous.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people lose track is they often put the big 20-year plan in place, even for their company. They have that, that big, hairy, audacious goal that Jim Collins came up with, or the big 20-year push of building a big operation and being able to sell it or whatever it's going to be. But they forget that it's really hard for everyone else to attach themselves to a goal that is so far out there. That it's much easier to get people to attach themselves to a goal that is a little bit more proximal. And 3 years tends to be enough of a stretch that it gets people excited, but it's not so far out that it's too far out there. 5 years tends to be a little bit too far of a push.
Interesting. All right, that sounds like wise advice. I'm going to start talking about that with my financial planning clients in my day job, and to see, as we have these discussions, which one they can grasp onto more easily.
What I like to do is actually use both. I like to use the big 20-year retirement plan push in addition to the 3-year push. So it gives them the big stretch they're working towards and then the more finite goals that they're breaking down.
All right, so tell me, how can people learn more about these ideas and the other ideas that you come up with?
Sure, they can go to the main TED website and they can see the TED Talk and just look up under my name, Cameron Herold, or my main website, which is CameronHerold.com, has all the tools that I talked about, and my book, Double-Double, is also available online.
Okay, and we will put a link to that at the show notes of today's show at GoldsteinOnGelt.com. Cameron, thanks so much for your time.
Douglas, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt Show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world, but if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.GoldsteinOnGelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt Show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt Show.